So ready to start?
1 second, I apologize. I'm coming right back. Sorry about that.
I guess Yessi's the only one we're missing.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. Okay. So what we were just talking about 2 weeks ago, sorry, we weren't able to meet last week. And unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, we met, but the Facebook live stream, I wasn't able to get it up there. But what we were talking about 2 weeks ago when we met was there were these two emissaries, kind of like soul beings, and they were going back and forth between the soul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who it implies that he's still alive, but he's in this kind of, he's in paradise already. And it's a good question. What does it mean to be alive and in paradise? So that's something that's in Kabbalah and even in Chassidus, with the famous story of the Baal Shem Tov making an ascension to heaven, and of course the Ari, a Kabbalist who was able to access these type of things. So he's seeing these different visions. A lot of them again include colors and candelabras, and the Beit HaMikdash is featured prominently in very interesting ways. And that's going to lead us into what we're doing this week, which is essentially a continuation of inquiry of the Rashbi, asking questions to these two souls who will then bring back answers from the Rav Mesivta, from the head of the heavenly yeshiva, and from Mashiach, almost kind of interchangeably, where sometimes the Mashiach will be featured, other times it'll be the head of the Mesivta. And then there's also, in addition to that going on, it's like the court, right? If you go to court, the court has to deal with both external and internal affairs. So internal affairs would be the things between Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Rosh Yeshiva, the Rav Mesivta. The external things would be a court case. In this instance, it would be somebody who arrives at what Christians, I think, call the pearly gates. We just call it the gates to Gan Eden, to heaven, to paradise. And he's not being let in because of something he did wrong. And it's not one person or one neshama who adjudicates, but it's like everyone is called in. So these two messengers have to temporarily suspend their discussion with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and attend this kind of court case. And then they report back on what the resolution is, when and how that neshama would be let in and what they did wrong. So there's going to be a lesson we're going to learn about that, which has parallels in the Gemara and the Medrash about the importance of not embarrassing other people. And I'll skip ahead a little bit because I think we might as well just do it inside instead of me giving you a full summary of what we're going to do. Is we're going to conclude today with something very important. I mentioned this very early on because one of the reasons why I was excited about doing this section, even though it took us a lot longer to get to because of a lot of breaks and so on, and so many other interesting things, is that one of the real serious questions that the Rashbi asks is, what's with women and Gan Eden? What's their place in Gan Eden? And he gets the answer. And the answer is he's told, or maybe even witnesses to some degree, even though he's a man, so I don't know what he actually, if it's more of a, he witnesses some element of it, of women's, for lack of a better word, study halls in paradise, where different women act in the place of like the Rosh Yeshivas. They are like the heads of these mystical yeshivas. And these are, of course, women who are no longer alive, women who feature in the Torah and the Medrash. So the two that we'll get to today are Batyah, who was the daughter of Pharaoh, a convert according to the sages, who adopted Moshe, who saved Moshe from the river. And the other one is going to be Sarach bat Asher. Sarach, the daughter of Asher, who, according to the Medrash, is the one who brought the news in a way that would be acceptable to Jacob, who already mourned the loss of his son Joseph, with a song that Joseph is still alive, and she, because of that way that she did that she gave Jacob hope instead of giving him the information in a way that he could have passed away from or got scared. She actually, interestingly enough, represents usually a female singer in our tradition because she's known for that song. So she'll also have her own yeshiva. And again, this is very interesting because until today we have this conversation about women and Torah learning, and therefore it's very appropriate for an example of women and Torah study that may have been different, may have been more inclusive than other texts would suggest. Okay, that's our intro. Let's get to it. We're again volume 9 of the Danny Matt edition, page 96 on top, or if you're just following in a regular Zohar, it's Chelik Gimel, Chelik 3, and we're on Daf Kuf Samach Zayin, actually Kuf Samach Vav. No, Kuf Samach Zayin. Kuf Samach Zayin, Amud Aleph, about to come on to Kuf Samach Zayin 167a. Okay, we are ready to hear more. But for the sake, but for the sake of coming to you, we didn't want to linger. Rabbi Shimon rejoiced. And again, this is these two messengers, the Shamot, Tzadikim, who are saying we wanted to hear more from the head of the academy, the Rav Mesivta, but we knew you were waiting, so we left. We give you giving over some. Okay, they said to him, "O holy pious ones, all the words of Torah within us are small matters, every single one.
The inun milan zeiran kaman inun milan rabravin ve'iloan adelaslan shiura.
And those small matters, how great and sublime they are, as to be immeasurable.
The halas begavan sefeka elabriru da araisa alburie.
For within us there is no safek, there is no doubt, but rather clarity or lucidity of Torah, clearly settled. Now, we know there's a kind of well-known line of the Gemara. My memory will probably get the gist of it, but not the correct words. That the Gemara says, what's a small thing? That's the discussion between Abaye and Rava, meaning the legalese, the questions of the machlokus, the debate about how to interpret the law. And what's a big thing? Ma'aseh Merkava. Ma'aseh Merkava is Kabbalah, the work of the chariot. So here, interestingly enough, they're playing with that, and they're saying our work is the small things. I think Danny Matt will say small things isn't necessarily to belittle their work, it's to say we use the least amount of words necessary. We're concise, okay? But I think it's really a playful acknowledgement that the small things, there's something about the small things that's infinite. It's not really clear what they're getting at. Is it concise that has infinity in it, or is it an acknowledgement that there is no such thing as a small thing? When you have a machlokas Abaye v'Rava, when you have a debate in the Talmud about how to interpret the law, as small as it sounds, as insignificant as it sounds compared to the purpose of creation, the purpose of creation and that small thing are one and the same. I don't know how to interpret it, but that's one way that I thought it might be alluding to. Right now,
Bahashta Rav Mesivta Parish Milan Sithimin Aldo.
the head of the academy is explaining concealed matters relating to this.
Begin the Ikara de Nishmasa Amailo Naher Ba'asarda.
For why is it that somebody's primary essence of their soul, why does it not shine in a particular place? But however, the person will merit or succeed to have it shine in another place. In other words, why do you need to be in a certain place to shine, and in the other place it just doesn't come out who you really are? Until now, we have not attained this. For the sake of coming to you, or maybe because, but we didn't attain it, but now we are going to attain it. Okay, let's do notes 137 through 139. They're very small, Zev.
137, we're ready to hear more from the head of the Heavenly Academy. 138, small matters, as the rabbi said, that is formulated succinctly. 139, we have not attained this. They did not hear the answer to this question yet.
Okay, let's do the last paragraph of the page, but another matter. We did succeed in hearing from him. A spirit that moves naked in the world without a child. His wife becomes a vessel so that he may be built.
My timer.
Why?
His
wife is a light or a lamp kindled by him. And both of them are a single lamp. This light coming out of that light.
If
one is put out, it is kindled by its very light, since they are a single light. Okay, note 140, Zev.
The spirit that moves naked. If a person dies without having lived virtuously, his spirit lacks a garment of good deeds and is condemned to roam the upper worlds aimlessly, barred from entering the divine realm. Here the nakedness is caused by the lack of a specific good deed, the first commandment of the Torah, procreation. In such a case, the naked spirit can be redeemed and be rebuilt if the deceased man's brother performs levirate marriage, marrying the widowed wife, impregnating her, and consciously drawing that homeless spirit into the embryo. This
And we've
process of
done that extensively in other sections of Zohar that we've studied.
Yeah. This process of reincarnation provides the spirit with another opportunity to fulfill itself on earth. The head of the academy indicates that the original husband and wife constituted a single lamp. If this husband dies, his light can be rekindled by his widow through levirate marriage. According to the biblical custom of levirate marriage, if a married man dies childless, his brother should marry the widow and father a child who will be considered the offspring of the deceased. Posthumously providing the dead man with offspring prevents his name from being blotted out. In Kabbalah, levirate marriage is understood in terms of reincarnation. Not only the name of the deceased husband is preserved, but also his soul, transmigrating into the embryo generated by the union of his widow and his brother. On levirate marriage, see Genesis 38, Deuteronomy 25, Ruth, and then some medieval context, look elsewhere. The English term levirate marriage derives from the Latin lever, which is the husband's brother, corresponding to the Hebrew term yibum, similarly deriving from yabam, the husband's brother. On reincarnation in Kabbalah, the connection between levirate marriage and reincarnation, see other volumes of Zohar. On being naked of good deeds, also see elsewhere.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Zev.
Ask the Rebbe.
Did you finish that?
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. There's more.
It's a big one.
Yeah. On being naked of good deeds, then there are references for that as well. On nakedness and childlessness, compare the rare biblical term ariri, which apparently means stripped, hence stripped of children, childless. And then there's some notes for that. Here, the term for naked, but your Torah, instead of what might be expected, but your Tula, the strange spelling, but your Torah may be influenced by ariri. On a vessel as a metaphor for a wife, see Sanhedrin and elsewhere in Zohar and the writings of Moshe de Leon.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that's it's a big note. Okay. Thank you, Zev.
Ask the Rebbe neder lemilan kadmon.
Page 99. Now, Rabbi, let us return to the previous matters.
The kad neder la'asrin netol Rosh Rav Mesivta.
When we return to our place, we will obtain permission from the head of the academy, the Rav Mesivta,
The inun milan de nekabel minei v'nei kamach.
concerning the words that we'll receive from him and that will tell them to you. In other words, again, that's their role right now, is inquiring things that the Rashbi wants to know and getting that from the Rav Mesivta and then bringing it back to the Rashbi.
Zakach ulokach da'at zochil lenahorin setimen.
Happy is your share, for you are entitled to concealed lights.
Mikol sitran me'elo mitata mehai alma.
Directions from above and from below,
Ume elma achra.
from this world and from the other world.
Amar Rabbi Shimon milo chada be'ena laminda itechel
So
do.
they're praising Rabbi Shimon about his access. He's granted this great access. What you could still ask, so if he's granted the great access, why don't they just take him up? Because at some point there are other sections of Zohar where he doesn't need other souls to be a go-between between him and Mashiach or the soul of Moshe and so on and so forth. But that's the story. When you have a story and you have a question on it, it's there's a Yiddish saying akasha if amaisa, which means you can't ask a question on a story because the story is just what happened. So usually you could ask a question on the Zohar, like, why? Like that's the story. I don't have a good answer. I mean, there is an answer, but that's the story. Rabbi Shimon said, one thing I wish to know. Go ahead, David. I mean, if you can inform me,
Nashin bahu alma izakon lasalka laela ohech inun tamon.
it's the big question. Women in this world, are they privileged to ascend on high? Or what is their status there?
Is this in this world or the world to come? Bahu alma.
It's in that world, in the world to
That
come.
Amar le I Rebbe bida islan raza yatira. Or
And he said,
yakira.
oh, Rabbi, concerning this is extremely deep secret. Like, this is so classified, even you don't just have access. We have to find out. Well, let's see if we can get clearance for you.
Begindalo legalo sistren de taman.
So as not to reveal the mysteries there.
Avodah yahach v'itol reshuv v'nemalaf.
But this one will go in and we'll ask for permission, and we'll tell you if we're granted permission to tell you, we will. Okay, why don't we have Zev read notes 142 and 141 and 42.
141, let us return to previous matters. This expression derives from the terminology of medieval preaching, though here it implies also that the two messengers wish to return to the heavenly academy where matters are being discussed. And this expression shows up elsewhere in the Zohar and in Tosfos. It does.
Yeah, that's the Tosfot of the Zohar.
Of the Zohar,
Sometimes
okay.
the sections of the Zohar is referred to as Tosfot.
And then 142, but this one will go, namely one of those two spiritual messengers.
Uh-huh.
Is there any theory why Reb Shimon in particular would be the person who would be curious about the women in that world? I know that's a kasha of whatever. It's like, that was his question. Don't ask why, but
It's a good question. Do we have any thoughts about Rabbi Shimon wanting to be curious about women's spiritual rights, so to speak, more than, or is Rabbi Shimon the spokesperson for what we all want to know?
but is the question real? Phrasing is the phrasing, but is he really asking about there, or is he wondering about here? And
Well, look,
the way it's there reflects this.
Let's assume he's talking about there, but doesn't that also reflect on here?
Yeah.
And let's remember that what you're experiencing in Gan Eden is to some degree that which the reality we've created in Olam Hazeh, in this world. So it certainly could be both. Like, I certainly think that we can learn something from this, not just a belief in the future life or women being able to have a nice, spiritual afterlife. I think it's something we can also reflect on for the moment.
But aside from that shot, if he's asking about the place of femininity, I mean, isn't he clearly also indirectly asking about the Shekhinah?
No, I don't think it's a question about the Shekhinah right now, because I think he's actually talking about the souls of actual women.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I understand it. I mean, the Shekhinah, we look. There's certain people who think that although Shekhinah is feminine, it's not about a particular woman. Like it's about a generic feminine spirituality. Not that could be equally accessible, or maybe even more accessible to men. Again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but there would be some people who would argue that, and they do. So I think here it actually is about women, not about the generic feminine, Shekhinah, feminine, divine feminine. Here it's talking about the souls of women, and by extension, women with bodies and souls. Because like I said, the soul's experience, it relates directly to what happened here in this world when it was in a body. Okay? Just then, one flew away and disappeared. A moment later, a little bit later, he returned to them. He said, I was about to enter. They were all in one wreath. Trying the case of one person who's standing at the entrance of Gan Eden, of paradise. And those angels called Keruvim were holding him and not letting him come in. And he was in pain between them. He was yelling out or crying out at the entrance. And all the righteous ones there heard. Now all the members of the academies are gathering to enter the presence of the King Mashiach to look into this case, his case. And I come to inform you that my colleague has to go there now with me. We're all requested there. Since a proclamation has passed amongst all the members of the academies, they should all gather now before Mashiach. Do note 143 because we're going to turn the page. It's the bottom of 99, top of 100, Zev.
143. I was about to enter. He was about to enter the heavenly academy to obtain permission when he saw the members sitting in a circle, one wreath, trying someone's case. Now both spiritual messengers must join them there. Wreath renders itura, crowning, referring here to a circle in which the members of the heavenly academy are sitting. This image recalls the arrangement of the Sanhedrin as described in Mishnah Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was arranged like a half-circular threshing floor so that they could see one another, which is the threshing floor is an Idra, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this like Karen B'Yavna, like this circular or half-circle style of learning, like an amphitheater seating. Okay. Let's go on. Top of 100. Or do we have to
Omar told I am b'madataman adanese gabach.
So he took a memorandum. We're calling it a tablet, and he gave.
Sorry,
it to
not piska chadav. Okay.
He gave him a tablet.
Omar told I am b'madataman.
And gave it to Rabbi Shimon saying, take this and examine what's there until we come back to you. So they gave him a petek. They gave him a note to read. Memorandum here. Both of them flew away.
Rabbi Shimon took
the memorandum and saw what he saw of the secrets there that whole day. At night he saw a lamp and sleep overcame him and he slept until morning. When daylight shone, the memorandum rose and flew away from him. Seems like they had a drone that took it away.
I was going to say this is like Snapchat. You just have it for a little bit and then it disappears.
It flies away.
Self-deletes. Yeah. Just
then those two arrived. These two, neshamot, they come back. They said to him, rise up, Rebbe. Happy is your share. Get up. On On account of you, we saw and attained many secrets, heavenly secrets.
Kama chedva achziyulan.
How much joy was shown to us.
Kayavu rishula galolach.
And
Komada
they gave
atboy.
us permission to reveal to you all that you desire.
Rosh Mesivta ilo anafak legaban.
The head of the Supreme Academy came out to us and said,
V'amar sha'ilu b'shalomei debar yochai.
give greetings to the son of Yochai, or ask to the well-being. That was when you'd greet somebody, you would ask them how are you? Hope you are
As
peace unto you, The son of Yochai's place has been cleared already for several days. No one can
Bless-
approach. Happy is he. Go ahead, read that.
Asher lebar yochai ha'panulik mikam yom lasman the yikrav legabe zako ihu.
Okay, great. Happy is he. We'll do one more paragraph, and Zev will read notes 144 and 45.
Rebbe kat parachna migabach.
Rebbe, when we flew away from you,
Olna v'chamena kol b'nei Mesivta.
we entered and saw all the members of the academies
Miskan fil legahi chol achad the Mashiach taman.
gathering within a certain place where the Mashiach was present.
V'dainu dina dahu barnash. The
And
kamal
they were
pis.
trying the case of that person who was
Shmei
standing at the
leslan.
entrance.
Shmei leslan rishul
The
legalos.
results of that education. His name we are not permitted to reveal.
It's star Rabbi Shimon al da.
Rabbi Shimon was saddened by this.
Amalei lo titstar Rabbi al da.
They said to him, "Oh, Rabbi, do not feel sad about this.
An teda b'dalelya b'chalmach.
You'll know tonight in your dream."
Aval dina dainu alei the Gozer Mashiach.
But they tried his case, and the Mashiach decreed
T'lehevi hahu barnash lebara b'hahu tzara arba in yomen.
that this person should remain outside, right? Not let into Gan Eden, suffering for 40 days.
Lasof arba in yomen yitzaru le bedina
And
b'tzara
at the
gehinim
end of the
shad.
40 days, he'll be tormented with the suffering of Gehenna for an hour and a half. Timeline is interesting. Because usually we have like Shiva, Shloshim, 11 months, 12 months in terms of the Avelut, which the Zohar believes is parallel to the suffering of the soul. As each stage represents a lesser degree of suffering of the soul. The strongest stage of suffering is before the burial, the onen. And so here it's like, where's 40 days? Why 40 and not 30? What's this hour and a half of Gehenna? Okay, let's read notes 145, 146.
Is it clear what this dream is? An teda b'dalelya b'chalmach? Something other than what he just.
I guess so, because if it's this, he's getting this information.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Zevin, read notes 145 and 146, please.
Well, I think 144 as well.
144.
The head of the spiritual academy.
Yeah.
He declares that a place has been reserved for the soul of Rabbi Shimon in the celestial Garden of Eden. And then it refers to a previous note. 145, within a certain palace. In this context, the term Hechala can mean a palace or a chamber. 146, Rabbi Shimon was saddened by this, that he did not know the name of the accused. The Messiah decrees that the sinner will remain suffering outside of the Garden of Eden and then will be tormented briefly in hell. On the motif of an hour and a half in hell, see elsewhere in the Zohar, for example, 162b, where the wicked are provided relief from sufferings in hell for the same amount of time.
Okay, so it's not the one and only time the Zohar mentions this hour and a half. Okay. All this.
V'cholda begin the yom achada chad min chavraya have a parish milan daraisa.
Because one day the Chavraya, the companions, were explaining words of Torah.
Kadmata l'chad mila yada hay barnash di yiskishal bay.
And when it reached a certain item, this person knew that he would stumble over it. And he told the companions, be quiet, don't say anything. Because the companions kept quiet, he stumbled over the item and felt ashamed. An account of the shame caused by this person, he is being punished with this harsh sentence. The Blessed Holy One does not wish to waive a sin of Torah even to a hairbreadth. Okay, so so basically, I read this in two ways. Okay. One way is a Musar way, and the other way is, I don't want to call it an academic way, but possibly a little bit more of an academic way. The Musar way, we'll start with the Musar way first, which is, this is very congruent with Gemara that, for example, I happened to be learning, I think, yesterday. And so the fact that I'm learning yesterday, I didn't look it up. It's just like I'm learning it. It's a pretty well-known Gemara that says that a person should rather, I think, throw themselves into a furnace, a fire, than embarrass somebody else in public. And what's a proof text or story that shows us that is that when Yehuda and Tamar was taking out to be burnt for getting pregnant while she was supposedly in waiting to do a levirate marriage with Yehuda's son Shelah. Now, if you remember, Yehuda didn't really want to give Tamar his son because his other two sons, Aaron and Onan, had died under Tamar's, wifeship. So she really wanted to have a child with that family. So she dressed up like a prostitute and stood by the crossroads, caught Yehuda's eye. He didn't have cash on him. So in exchange for his services, she said, you'll owe me the money. I think it was a certain amount of animals. I don't remember how many. She said, give me something. Give me your somcha, psilcha. Give me something of yours, like a signet ring, something of significance that I know you'll come back for, a collateral that you'll come back for. And then he came back. He sent his friend to pay and retrieve his items, and she was nowhere to be found. A number of months later, not knowing who she was, because she covered her face. They're now taking her out to be killed. She could have just said, "Look and see. These are the signet rings of Judah. Who's the father?" But instead, she says, whoever these are is the father. She didn't identify him. And he took the responsibility. In other words, he could have let her go to death and that would have been it. Nobody would have known that he was the father. So she was willing to die, to be burnt in a furnace, rather than embarrass Yehuda in public. I mean, that's a major story. I don't understand that halachically, really in a simplistic way. Like, are you halachically required to do something like that? No. If I were Tamar, like, this is Yehuda's, save me, somebody save me. I believe that Gemara has some halachic implications. It's more musar. It's more like sometimes halacha and musar overlap, and it's not clear where one begins and one ends. And this is one of those stories. So in that's one interpretation of this. This is a musar Zohar. There's a musar Gemara. There's a musar Zohar. It's building up this suspense of this guy waiting in the heaven's gate to get in. He can't get in. everyone has to gather, and here's the verdict. And why? Because he set somebody up in the base medrash. What happened? I think the note says something like, he saw this guy didn't really know his way around a particular section of Torah. And instead of having some of the people there kind of like augment it and explain it, while not everyone would know that he was ignorant in this area, he purposely made everyone be quiet till this guy stumbled and made a fool out of himself, showing himself to be ignorant of this topic and became embarrassed. So that's my first shot. It's a simple shot. It's musar. In other words, part of, of course, they wouldn't use the musar. It's ethics. It's like Pirkei Avot, which the ideas of Pirkei Avot are found throughout Medrash, throughout the Gemara, and even in the Zohar. Okay. My second interpretation, that everybody understands that I think is pretty obvious. You're with me on that?
Yeah.
Yay or nay?
Yay.
I think so.
You disagree, let me know. It's fine. I'm open to.
This is in terms of, Musar, in terms of not embarrassing somebody.
Yeah, like how important it is to be careful with your words and so on. It's a lesson for all of us. I think that's a pretty straightforward pshat. It's not a chiddush. It's just that's pshat. It parallels these other gemaras, midrashim that are similar to it. Okay. The more academic interpretation I would give it, because I know academics like to do this, they like to create an economy. I don't know if it's even true that there were Hasidim and Misnagdim back then. You know what I mean? They weren't literally Hasidim and Misnagdim. But arguably, you could say that there were two types of rabbis. There were rabbis who were the recognized Gedolei Hadar, the leaders of the generation. That would be somebody like the Rambam or the Ramban. Not to say that they didn't have controversies, like the Rambam was very controversial, but he held, like, those who supported him, and there were many, held him in the highest esteem, not up there, but the highest, right? And that could be said of the Ramban and the Rashba and the Ritva, and then later people like the Rush and or before that the Rif, meaning these are like the people who interpret the Talmudic interpreters, and then the halachic interpreters of the Talmud. They're tier one. They're like the highest on the rabbinic totem pole, so to speak. Secondary to them would be the Kabbalists. And maybe there was some tension sometimes between them, where Kabbalists didn't know all of the Talmud by heart, didn't know all of the ways of getting to the halacha. The Kabbal, like it might be like even today, there's that tension. There are some, rabbis who are very well known and liked, but they're not the ones who are the most knowledgeable of the Talmud. There's a certain tension. So perhaps you could read the Zohar as saying, now it's not critiquing any Talmudic scholar, but it's critiquing Talmudic scholars who use their knowledge as kind of in an insensitive way. Like it's gotten them to the top of the totem pole, and to stay there, they're okay with somebody being embarrassed to show that they're lesser in knowledge. So that might be another way of reading it. You with me? Anyone still there with me on this one? David Newton, what do you say?
Isn't this making the same point as the previous example about one is not embarrassing somebody, the other is not showing off, I guess?
Yeah, it's exact same point, but one is just all around for everyone equal, Ted. And the second point is more aimed at a whole group of, it would be like the equivalent of the Baal Shem Tov making fun of the so-called, in his mind, arrogant sages, Torah scholars who might know a lot of Torah, all of the Torah, but are not humble and are not sufficiently aware of how other people feel. And they think that their scholarship is so important that they will even humiliate the lesser knowledgeable by showing in public, like here's the problem. I'll tell you a real problem. Being a Rosh Yeshiva is essentially the way to assert your Rosh Yeshiva-ness, you're like head of the academy. It's not just because you have the title. You have to defend your position against students who will argue with you. They're allowed to argue. They're allowed to disagree with the Rosh Yeshiva. It's not a Rebbe. And how does the Rosh Yeshiva defend himself? Anybody been in a yeshiva? Ben?
I don't know.
Come on, Ben, you know. He argues his position, and some Rosh Yeshivas occasionally lose it and yell at the student like, hey, you're an idiot, or that's a stupid question. And it's
funny that you say that, because I always tell this to people. Someone one time I was around and someone said, oh, this might be what, like, I don't know, the Ramban means. And the rabbi tells them the Ramban doesn't mean that. He says, how do you know? He says, because the Ramban didn't say stupid things. That's all
you
he
know
said.
exactly what I'm talking about, Ben, right? So there were some Rosh Yeshivas could be saying that because they're insensitive, and the person maybe wasn't saying the right thing, but other Rosh Yeshivas actually say that to their best challenges. They deflect them with an insult, and some that'll scare most people. Will just back down when they hear that. Oh, it's a stupid question. They'll believe it, but half the time the Rosh Yeshiva is simply defending their own status and position, but it might take a toll on some of the students. Like it's a rough and tumble game learning Gemara in a yeshiva. So it could be, and perhaps the losers are the ones who are the ones who are dreaming. They're in the Zohar. They're not just now. Some of them cross both lines. It's a whole other thing. So that might be another way. Ted, you're right. It's the same. It's just more of like it's going on a whole group of people. Perhaps I don't know who that group would be, but I think there are scholars who write about different that within the subtext of the Zohar there might have been like rivalries between different groups of rabbis. Maybe that could be one way of understanding it. You guys with me? Okay. Because look, I mean, it's still true until today, where there's sometimes rabbinic rivalries, and one camp thinks the other camp is not learned enough, and the other camp accuses the one who's claiming the great scholarship to be insensitive or lack humility. So it may be that as well. Okay, let's continue. Note 147, Zev.
147. All this because one day, this person realized that one of the companions was about to stumble and fail in explaining a passage in Torah. He made sure that none of his colleagues would save the speaker from stumbling by offering a suggestion. Thereby, the person committed a grave sin of humiliating someone in public, and what is worse, humiliating a devotee of Torah, as implied by the phrase "a sin of Torah." See in the Talmud Bav Metzia, whoever publicly humiliates his fellow, literally blanches his face, is as though he spills his blood. Following this quote, the Talmud concludes that such a person is among those who descend to hell and do not ascend. In the Talmud and Sanhedrin, it says that such a sinner is classed as one who has no share in the world to come. The expression, even to a hairbreadth, is based on the Talmudic saying, the Blessed Holy One deals strictly with those around him even to a hairbreadth.
So in a way, even though the Zohar seems pretty stern, it's less stern than saying the person has no portion of the world to come. So the Zohar as Medrash is interpreting these Talmudic texts to be exaggerations, which the rabbis are known to exaggerate. Okay, but it's still very severe, very serious. Okay, let's continue.
Kainu dine v'nafku kol b'nei Mesivta.
They passed judgment on him, and all the members of the academies left.
Ma'ana she'olna reshu dehabarei diyochai shal sheltada.
And I asked permission for the son of Yochai, who would ask the question, remember about women. And therefore they showed me what I had not known previously.
Rebbe
6 palaces they showed me with countless delights and pleasures. And the place where the curtain is spread in the garden. For from that curtain and beyond, no males can enter at all. Okay, let's do notes 148 and 149. Zev?
148. I asked permission. Here, one of the 2 spiritual messengers is reporting to Rabbi Shimon about having inquired on his behalf. The phrase "this question" refers to Rabbi Shimon's question about the status of women in the Garden of Eden. 149. 6 palaces they showed me. As mentioned in the note above, the term Hechala can mean a palace or chamber. Of the 6 palaces mentioned here, only 4 are portrayed below. Apparently, the description of the other 2 has been lost. In Seder Gan Eden, which might be by Moshe de Leon, the author refers to 7 such palaces or habitations, according to one manuscript 5, and then describes 5 of them, following which he mentions the habitations of the 4 matriarchs also mentioned here. The 5 he describes are headed respectively, I guess it's Batyah.
Batyah, yeah, Batyah.
Yeah, okay. Spells it weird. By Batyah, the daughter of Pharaoh, Yocheved, Miriam, Huldah, the prophetess, and Abigail. On the destiny of women, see in the afterlife, see Talmud Brachos and elsewhere. On the curtain above, after the note, on the curtain, see above after other notes. This description of palaces for female souls in the Garden of Eden had a lasting impact on popular devotional Jewish literature. And he refers us elsewhere.
Okay, great. So it's great stuff here. So let's see what's going on in this first palace. In one palace is Batyah, or Batyah, even though he writes it as Batyah, but
you're like Yemenite.
Yeah, I've heard people say that, but it's like that's not how us Ashkenazim do not say Batyah or Batyah. We say Batyah. Daughter of Pharaoh, accompanied by many myriads and thousands of virtuous women. And every single one of them has places of light and delight without any crowding at all. Now that's the difference between the men and the women. The women, they like to have space for themselves. 3 times a day, heralds proclaim, or a proclamation is proclaimed. Here comes the image of Moshe the faithful. Batyah comes out to a certain screen she has and sees the image of Moshe and bows towards him. Page 102 saying, happy is my share that I raised this radiance. This is her delight greater than all. Okay, let's do a little bit about Batyah. There's a little bit about her in the note. 149. No,
Number
we did
150.
150 on page 102.
Yeah. Batyah, daughter of Paro. According to Exodus 2, Pharaoh's anonymous daughter found the baby Moses in the Nile and rescued him. Rabbinic literature identifies her with Batyah, daughter of Pharaoh, who's mentioned in 1 Chronicles 4:18. Whereas the etymology of the name Batyah is actually Egyptian, and that's why he's spelling it this way. He's saying it means queen in Egyptian. The rabbis construe it as meaning daughter of God, and several sources indicate that she converted to Judaism. Fitting the account here, Batyah is said to have been one of those privileged to enter the Garden of Eden while still alive. On entering the garden still alive, he gives references about that, and also about her name.
Okay, great. She returns to the women,
Just
Top-
Gabi Noshin Veshtadon Bipikude Araisa.
and they engage in the mitzvahs and the commandments of the Torah.
Kulu Beinum Diyukum Dahava Bahai Alma Belavushin Dinahora.
All of them in the images that they assumed in this world. In a garment of light, like the garment of the males,
Bar Delo Nahari Hachi.
except not shining the same.
Hikudin the Raisa de Lozachu Lakaimalon Bahai Alma.
Commandments of Torah that they were not privileged to fulfill in this world.
Mishtadle Bahu Betamayu Bahu Alma.
They work in them or delve with them in the reason, and meaning they understand them and the reasons in that world.
V'chol Hani Noshin Diase Bahade Basya Basparo Ikru Noshin Nanos.
And all of those women who dwell with Batyah, daughter of Pharaoh, are called carefree women.
The Lord Stara Bitsara the Gehinum
So they
Klal.
do not suffer the torments of hell at all. Okay, note 151. It's an interesting note.
151. They engage in commandments of Torah. Generally, in medieval Jewish society, women did not engage in studying Torah. And according to Talmud Brachos, they are exempt from time-bound mitzvahs. In the Garden of Eden, the souls of virtuous women study, if not fulfill, numerous mitzvahs. Before entering a human body, each soul exists in the Garden of Eden, where it is clothed in an ethereal body resembling the physical body that it will inhabit on earth. As the soul leaves the garden, it removes the ethereal body and prepares to put on an earthly body. Eventually, when the soul returns to the garden upon death, it regains the ethereal body. Here, the author may be alluding to the related notion of a spiritual garment woven out of the good deeds that a person has performed while on earth. If so, the male's garments shine more brightly because the men have performed many mitzvahs from which the women are exempt. On the ethereal body, see above. On the garment of good deeds, see elsewhere. On the medieval attitude towards women studying Torah, see Sefer Chassidim, where it says one does not teach a woman or a minor the depth of Talmud or the reasons for mitzvahs or the secrets of Torah. However, the laws of mitzvahs one should teach her. If she does not know the laws of Shabbos, how can she observe Shabbos? Similarly with every mitzvah. On the theme of the reasons for the commandments, which plays a central role in Kabbalah, see Matt's own work, The Mystic, and the Mitzvahs. On female souls being engaged in Torah, see other notes. In the original context in Isaiah, the prophet is condemning the women of Jerusalem. The verse reads in full, Nashim Shanaot, O complacent or carefree women, rise and hear my voice. Benos Bechotos, O confident or unsuspecting, complacent daughters, listen to my speech. In rabbinic literature, as here, the verse is applied positively to the souls of virtuous women in the afterlife.
Okay, great. Great stuff. Thank you, Seth.
Chola Achra is Serach Bas Asher. The common Noshin Riba V'Alfim Bahado.
Okay, great. So we just finished with Batyah. Let's talk about Batyah for a second. What do we know about her? She's a convert. She has the merit of saving Moshe Rabbeinu, pulling him out of the water. Everybody knows the medrash that says her hand miraculously stretched further than it really was to be able to save Moshe. So that represents the spiritual mother of Moshe, the savior of Moshe, the one who believed in him when even on some level his parents had to give up on him. Okay, so there's a lot there, and then let's talk a little bit about this idea of is there a difference, and Danny Matt, as he noted, between the Kabbalist's permission or maybe more, maybe even encouragement of women to learn the Tameh HaMitzvot? Again, one can argue that no, this is in Gan Eden. This has nothing to do with what we should do here in this world. But many people, many Kabbalists, for example, Lubavitcher Rebbe, felt that Tameh HaMitzvot, so the Tameh HaMitzvot, the reasons for the mitzvot, are the only real way to fulfill them in their kittikunam, like the way they're really supposed to be done. Because if you learn, let's say, a book like the Tanya, it's very clear that without the emotional connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the mitzvah remains below. It doesn't take flight. It explains that in great detail, that even though you might have technically fulfilled the mitzvah was done, but it doesn't have this, the deed that's done without any emotional desire to connect to God is lacking in some elements. Maybe not technically, meaning you fulfilled your obligation, but spiritually. So that being said, just like the rabbis allow and to some degree even encourage or request that women study Torah that is nogea lahalacha, like the practical application of the law, they likewise should understand the pnimiyut Torah. So that's one way of simply understanding that this is permission and more for women to be included. In fact, there's a whole talk I heard from Ida Rappaport. I think I don't even know if she's still alive, but
Yeah, she's alive.
she's alive. Good, thank God. Okay, it's somebody else who okay, so Ida Rappaport is I believe the head of the Jewish studies of, is it called Jews College in London, David? What's the college in London called?
Yeah, it's called, hold on. It was called Jews College, but it's, but as Jonathan Sachs was always quick to point out, it's now changed its name.
Okay.
It's got a fancy, more technical name now.
So Ida Rappaport is, I don't know what her position is there, but she's senior, very senior professor there. And she, Columbia University had her give a talk here, and I attended it. Fascinating, very, very interesting, because it's about women in Chassidut. And what she posits, she defends a position and tries to prove its accuracy using historical and archival notes and stories and so on, that Sholem posits, which is that the reason why Hasidism didn't encourage more women's participation and leadership was in a direct response of the fear of being associated with Sabbatinianism. And in the beginning, I was really unconvinced, but she laid out a pretty strong case that that there's so many other, at least initial, like kind of openness, egalitarianism in the spirit of Hasidism, that you would have thought that they would have had a greater role for women, which they didn't have until much later. And even then, limitedly to certain groups and certain capacities. And she tries to prove Sholom's position, as I said, that it was that because there were female prophetesses or so-called prophetesses in the ranks of those who were followers of Shabtai Tzvi, the Hasidism had to go the opposite direction to disassociate themselves with them. But what was interesting is that she's convinced that otherwise women would have had a much greater role because of the nature of Chassidut. Where would be a text that would even suggest that? Something like this would, that women, in other words, that the position there is that there was some other societal pressure not to include women more in leadership roles or giving them more to do on their own or studying the Hasidic text, which was studied by individual women in rare instances, but not as a common thing. Okay, just thought I'd get that out there. Let's do a little bit more because we have to call it a night, because I think I said I was going to go to Shul. I did say I was going to go to Shul for Maariv tonight.
It's now called the London School of Jewish Studies. It got respectability.
Okay, the London School of Jewish Studies. Okay, and she's still alive, right? She's not that old. I mean, she's not.
Yes, she's still alive. She's working on a new book right now.
Okay, good. Thank God. I'm sorry. She should forgive me. She's alive and well.
Zev not only knows her state of being, but he knows exactly what she's doing right now. She's
Yeah.
writing a book.
Seth, what
Okay.
chapter is she on?
Scholar.
that I know, but I heard that it's called the subtitle is something like male souls in female bodies, and it's like about the mysticism of
Wow.
when it transmigrated. The Zohar talked about that. We read that a while ago. That there's something wrong, so he's reincarnated as a woman or whatever. So she's writing something.
It's great. Okay, so I think next week is Erev Yom Kippur. I mean, Erev Yom Kippur, the Freudian slip. Erev Thanksgiving. I think we should pass because we have to do shopping. I know I'm going to be preoccupied. I'm just